Berger and I welcome you to our regular Tuesday morning news conference. We're here this morning to announce our opposition to the, quote, Employee Free Choice Act, quote, commonly referred to as card check. Clearly, truth in advertising doesn't apply to bill titles in Congress since this legislation has nothing to do with promoting free choice. Very simply, card check would eliminate a worker's right to a secret ballot in elections to determine whether a workplace is to be represented by a union or not. Free choice would be severely restricted by subjecting workers to undue pressure and intimidation by having to make a public decision for or against union representation. Just imagine if we applied the card check to the ballot for election to office. People could go around just collecting votes. Beside the elimination of a worker's right to privacy in making his or her decision, this bill also contains a very dangerous provision mandating binding arbitration if a collective bargaining agreement cannot be settled in 90 days. This would leave the most critical decision of a contract in the hands of a government official instead of the marketplace and the free interplay between employers and employees. This would severely warp the tenets of competition and innovation that has made our free market economy successful. It's my intent to send a letter signed by as many Republican members as choose to do so, and Representative Tom Tillis, our whip, will discuss our progress on that, to our North Carolina congressional delegation, asking them to oppose the card check bill on behalf of North Carolina workers. I firmly believe that an overwhelming majority of workers in our state agree with us on this issue, and their voices need to be heard loud and clearly in Washington. I also call on our Democratic colleagues to do likewise. We hope to have over 50 Republican House members sign. We're in the minority. We call on the Democrats to get over 50 signatures to a similar letter if they're concerned about the economy of North Carolina. This is an issue of fairness and protection for our citizens in the workplace. It's also an economic issue. The burdens placed by this legislation on business would further exacerbate the fragility of the current economic condition and will take away our competitive advantage on this issue. Senator Berger has a couple of remarks.
Thank you, Skip. And I'm going to come back later. I've got a little bit of an update on the probation matter. Just wanted to let you know that in the Senate, we've got a similar letter that our Republican Senate members are in the process of signing. We should have that ready for distribution. We've got one member who's out of town, won't be back till tomorrow, so it may be tomorrow before we have that and we can release that to you. At this point, I'd like to introduce Senator Bob Rucho from Mecklenburg County, who is our point person on the issue of labor union organization in North Carolina.
Thank you, Senator Berger. Good morning, all. I think from what Representative Stam spoke about, it seems that the only reason Congress would pass a card check legislation would be to expand union influence in the right to work states. You know, we in North Carolina enjoy an economic advantage over many other states because of the right to work to recruit new industry and create new jobs. If this card check legislation becomes effective and supersedes North Carolina law, it will negatively impact the North Carolina economy and eliminate any competitive edge we presently have in recruiting industry and business. One thing we need to recognize that what the unions did to cripple the American automobile industry and what they did to Detroit, Michigan, we surely in North Carolina can't allow unions to do that to the North Carolina businesses. And at some point, the North Carolina General Assembly should take a stand and necessary legislation to prevent any damage to our North Carolina economy. Thank you.
And then finally, Representative Tom Tillis, who's our whip. I think we've already distributed to you the text of the letter that Tom is circulating.
Yeah, if anyone else needs a copy, we have extra ones. We've already got about 40 signatures. We expect all 52 members to support this measure and stand behind our leadership in sending this message to Congress. No other questions. I guess probably the only thing I've had to deal with keep people from trying to get more people to sign on. We want this to be the leadership, the Republican members of the House, but clearly our colleagues in the Senate are moving forward with this, and we really do encourage our Democrat colleagues to send the message to Congress, particularly the Senate, that will have this matter before them this session.
Other questions? Yes, sir, Mark.
Senator Rucho mentioned this, but either any of you could address it. mentioned something about North Carolina General Assembly taking a stand in passing legislation to prevent any damage. If the federal government were to undertake this bill, there's really not much of anything the General Assembly could do to countermand it, is there? If
the bill is written in such a way that it preempts the field, of course, under the supremacy clause, we can't directly contradict it or countermand it, but he's researching, I believe, efforts we could make to try to level the playing field. You want to?
Yes, sir. The research we're doing right now, and South Carolina and Virginia have already undertaken an effort to try to prevent any preemption to what may be a constitutional provision in their Constitution. I know South Carolina is in the process of accomplishing that now. There is research being done as we speak to see what North Carolina can do, whether it be a constitutional amendment of some sort, which we'd hope to have our Democrat colleagues support us in trying to prevent any preemption by the federal authorities and also protect our businesses accordingly.
Let me, on that point, offer for the most eager reporter article I read last night called Tailor Made. This refers to the Taylor Law, which was passed in New York State about 30 years ago, including card check legislation, and it documents the tremendous problems that it created for New York State and the stranglehold that the unions have on that state now. That's Emory. Let you read that.
the enterprise reporter. Enterprising reporter. Just one additional thing, and this is just something that came out in the news this morning. This legislation is part of a wider strategy, it appears, in North Carolina and across the nation to increase union activity and unionization, particularly amongst public sector employee unions. And there was a quote in this morning's News and Observer from Dana Cope, the Scenic president, and his quote is interesting, and I hope that he was overstating his case to a certain extent. But what he said was, Southern states are pro-business and anti-worker. And then he goes and says, we're trying to break that tradition and history. Now, does he mean that he wants North Carolina and other Southern states to be pro-worker and anti-business? I hope that's not what he meant. What we need is an economy, and we need a state that is pro-business and pro-jobs. And this legislation will harm the ability of the economy in North Carolina and the rest of the nation to create jobs. And that's really what it's all about. I'm hopeful, in response to Mark's question, I'm hopeful that there would be something we could do at the state level to address the preemption issue. It really is something that strikes at the very heart of an individual's right to contract and an individual's right to work. And North Carolina has always been a very strong right to work state.
And let me, to elaborate on this, say it's not sufficient for our Democratic colleagues to just say they're against this. They need to prevail upon their people in Washington to defeat it. They can say they're for a good business climate all day long till the cows come home. But if this bill passes, it will hurt the economy of North Carolina. Did you understand one of the provisions of this is that if you have this legislation and if you don't reach an agreement within a certain number of days, an arbitrator will impose the terms and conditions of employment. Have we ever had that in North Carolina before, where a government bureaucrat essentially decides what the terms and conditions of employment would be? That would be the death of our free market of economy.